What were Games Workshop thinking? Like, what were they actually thinking? What is Trovarian thinking? And what should you be thinking in order to complete and execute the most important skill in our entire hobby? We, of course, are talking about the art of copying. We'll also answer why I'm looking more like the Hobbit than normal. This is going to be a very, very full tutorial, guys. Get ready, get your notebooks if you want them, grab a coffee if you like. Let's jump in. Okay, yet again, we've made some very big claims in that intro. So recently I've executed this paint scheme. It is based on the Games Workshop Tiamet scheme that they shared, executed by their incredibly, ridiculously talented Eavy Metal team. In this tutorial, we are going to take you from start to finish, the entirety of the model. Every single one of my important decisions is going to be outlined. What is more, we're going to be either popping up on screen, whether I'm making a color and planning decision, how I want things to look, whether this color is like a dirty blue or a clean blue, that type of stuff, because people have been asking a lot of questions about these. We'll be doing that skill. And then the second skill, because we're only showing 2 skills in this entire video and they are all you need. The second skill is how to adapt on the fly about your paint's properties. I cannot overstate how important these are, how regularly the pros do these without even thinking, and how closer to a pro you could be just by thinking about them a tiny bit. So let's jump in with example number 1. All right, the people have spoken. We've got Hive scheme Tiamet. I don't fully know how I'm going to go about it yet. I've had a quick look at a picture that I've got up behind me here on the normal stand, but let's see how we do this with a kind of dry brush contrast speedy method. So basically this scheme, apart from the gun, is entirely cool and blue. So I might use these two, or maybe I'll whip out the Doomfire Magenta, I think it's called, the very bright contrast. But we've based it in blue horror, which gives us a little room to go up to white, which I think we should do. And then I'm just going to be sticking with that. There is a bit of a hint of something interesting going on in the shell. So I've gone for a turquoise, but it's still quite a bluey one. We've got the strength of Leviathan if needed, and I'm going to be willing to drop in some deep, colourful interest from scale 75. Let's rock on. They are small, these guys. Go for a small and a medium. Let's try going super strong. So for those of you who don't know, this is my go-to incredibly strong white. This is bold titanium white from Proaquil, Monument Hobbies. It's really good stuff. It is strong though, so we will be proceeding with caution. Okay, this is good. I think we're good. We can work with this. I want to keep our dry brushing pretty soft. The nice thing about using a paint as strong as this one is that you can dilute it heavily and it'll still affect the model quite a lot. So I think for our purposes here, it should work out all right. Okay, good. So what I'm going to do now, weirdly, is I'm going to continue dry brushing it just to make sure that any dust leaves both my brush and the model. Okay, our foundations are laid. What is next? Okay, so the top half I'm not too worried about because it's darker in the scheme, so that shouldn't pose issues particularly. The bottom bit is where we're going to have to be more careful, so I do want to make sure that we get this right. Let's get some medium. If you want proof that contamination might be a bad thing, look at that one. I think that's just old though, actually. Okay, contrast medium first. This is going to be a soft mix. We can't afford to put it down thick because we'll have to wait for drying time and we're too impatient, but let's see what we got. So I think actually Drakenhof's got a bit of black in it. I just kind of want a pure blue. Let's go something a little different. So to keep coherency, we're going to use some Pterodon turquoise. Slightly more greeny than it looks on camera. And what we're going to do is you could take a dot of Leviathan for this. I'm going to use some of Poldra though. There we go. I think that's a good idea. A little bit more medium. So the reason I didn't want to use either of the others is that they're quite blacky, and that's not what we were going for here. It's thoroughly mixed. Now I have my reference up behind me. I'm going to be paying attention to it, and for now I'm going to use the size 3, but I might need to drop down. The things I need to be careful to avoid are the bit that's going to be pink, and that's about it really. Let's see what we can do. We are not the Eavy Metal team, but yeah. Okay, maybe that is too strong. Even what I'm going to do is make sure that I think that is too strong. Okay, so this is definitely paint properties. We've got a color that we're happy with. What we need to do is make sure that it's not going down too thick in terms of how it looks visually. We can either add more medium in, more easy, or we can add less thickness, so we can use the paint thinner. More medium is easy for us, it involves less thinking. You could use a thinner layer, but if you're going fast, more medium might be the way to go to get the properties you want without it being too fiddly, basically. There's a lot of medium in there, so I've got quite a forgiving drying time to play with. I don't think my ratio was wrong in terms of the colors, but for the behavior I want, I should have just used a little bit less paint. So I'm going to break it down into sections. So we did all of that leg. It's very important you do not miss any bits. When you're working from a light base coat, it really matters. These models are cool, but they do cover themselves quite a bit, so that's something we just have to watch out for. Absolutely fine for us to run up to all of the top details, because they're going to be very dark anyway. Trying to keep my model at the same orientation for all of this. I don't want my contrast running in multiple directions. Okay, we talk about this a lot with contrast. I cannot emphasize how important it is, the orientation of your model. This is absolutely paint properties. We're working with contrast, it's quite runny, we're not using it thin, it's going to run down according to gravity. If we take our model and we tip it this way to reach another area, if it was running this way, it's now going to also run this way. That's dreadful, because you're going to have streaks going down and streaks going sideways. We don't want any streaks, so let's try and only control them in one direction and work with it rather than against it. Okay, that is everything apart from the type of bits that I easily missed. One wobbly bit on his tail here. I'm going to do the top part of the tail's second coat now. The tail gets darker towards the end anyway, so I think you can get away with that. Be careful to resist temptation to do this too much. We want to keep it light, so that might be enough. Okay, so this one actually falls into both. We have a light skin color on our model. If we try and fix things or repeat steps, even though that's something that we do a lot with contrast on this channel, you can't add lightness, you're just going to make it darker and darker. That's why we started from a light base coat. So at this point, we just got to resist, because if we put more stages down now, we're going to have to do more light colors with proper painting afterwards to bring the color up enough, and our shadows might get too dark anyway. So process-wise, we wanted a nice thin coat that didn't affect the model too much or darken it too much, that still gave us the kind of colours that we were after. So stop here, be disciplined. The areas where we don't have to is the tail, because the tail's got that really cool effect where it gets darker, so we can get away with it there. That went all right. We'll do the purple bit at the end. Let's go for the dark. Still see the different colour bit settled on the bottom. The proper paint job's got very dark bits around the teeth as well. Maybe that's worth noting and trying to make sure we replicate. Okay, pretty sure I can just get away with using Nightshade as a base. And due to the strength of this, I'm going to use a brush that I can get a bit more control with for sure. Now I'm completely prepared for this to not look great on the first coat. So yeah, we're just going to hold the course and be prepared to repeat. It's going to look extremely similar to the other areas at first, at the very least. So the bits on the head are probably a little bit more forgiving, and the back, it's the bit around the thighs that is going to be an issue. Okay, first coat down, just making sure I've not missed any bits. We're going to hit it multiple times, but obviously it's best to get it all over each time. The gun's kind of got its own colour, which is the same as the claws, so I'll do them together later. Actually just hair dried it there with heat off for a bit to cool it down. You don't want to be using contrast on something that's hot. Really, really bad idea. You'll get kind of instant drying and tea stains or coffee stains, depending what you want to call them. That type of stuff. So as predicted, second coat's doing more. Still not looking to rush. It's definitely easier once you're not on the first coat for sure. I think we can be a little bit braver with the application now, but still there is no rush. We might want to stop earlier than the paint scheme because we think it looks cool, even if we are following its only kind of inspiration. Taking a moment to make sure that we've definitely hit the edges. And with these strokes now, I'm going to start thinking about depositing more in the recesses than the raised areas. We were just trying to get it all over, but if we take the head as an example, definitely trying to run against these details, leave a heavier pooling there. Catch the entire thing, but lift off against them. At the end of this, I'll probably go around certain details and dump a black wash in them for black lining. So that coat already made a huge difference. I don't know whether the green's been deleted by my camera. Yeah, it's beginning to look pretty cool now. If I wasn't recording here, I'd be using the right amounts and working at the right speed, but I can't multitask, so it slows me down. There we go, that's the coat where we get the depth. 3 is the magic number. Alright, ran out of battery. All I did was put down a little black layer. There's basically no colour to the weapon bit, so I think just basically black makes sense. I might mix a little bit of blue in with it. We're going to do 1 dark X Factor coat into the recesses of the scales, and then depending how it looks at that point, we'll make our minds up on the decision about whether we continue with doing the same step. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to mix a little bit of black in there, I think. That seems sensible. I had a look at Levidon. I don't actually like it that much as a colour, so I'm not going to use it. And then pretty easy here, rather than using we could use Black Templar, but I'm just going to use a little bit of black paint. There's nothing wrong with Black Templar. Either way, it'd be pretty similar, I think. So obviously that is pretty strong. I'm going to use it with caution. I think it's about right. So I'm going to push that. Maybe we could get away with using this all over. Let's use it all over. Do be aware, the moment you add a normal paint into a contrast, the contrast will dry a lot faster. Be aware of it. Think about your sections, where you're blocking things up into. It's kind of nice in a way, it speeds things up. And with the black in, this is going to do a much better job. Catching those edge sections, we don't want to be light colours. Cool, that's worked really well actually. Maybe I should have done that from the first step. I find there's one way that's easy to paint a model being right or left-handed, and the other way just feels a little bit more awkward on details that all run in the same direction at least. Cool, alright. It is now time to do a little bit of proper painting in the middle, where we let everything there fully dry. I do not have deep Kim Flesh, which is what GW used for the official paint scheme, but I have Ulthuan Grey, and I reckon that's pretty close. I can always add a little bit of Pterodon Turquoise into it. What we're going to do is pop some down, water it down, and then what we're going to do is just see how that looks as a highlight colour. I've got my inspiration behind me. I'm not using my brain here. GW have done it for me. Okay, so I'm going to end my strokes at the bits where I want things to be the lightest. And basically, largely, I'm just going to copy what Contrast has done. If in doubt, I'll check out the picture, see what GW did on the official one. But where it's lighter and less contrast is pulled, I can kind of echo that. Okay, so it's just that. All over. Got a small brush here using a 00. Yeah, let's do it. I don't know what I'm going to do with the tail yet. Well, that's complicated. We'll leave that for later. Okay, so with the white blocking in kind of done now, you'll note that I started experimenting on the tail. I don't know if I can pull off GW's kind of fancy worm tail. That's a problem for later. I'm going to use a dark blue, so I'll probably just use Nightshade to blackline and separate all these areas. We're going for a kind of clean GWE look, and separating the areas clearly is a really, really easy way to kind of make it look a little bit more crisp. So you're going to need a small brush for this. It doesn't have to be perfect. We are using a shade, it's not a contrast, it's not going to behave like an ink or anything scary. We do need to be quite careful about dabbing, so we're going to do that everywhere. Every single thing is going to be separated from other parts. It shouldn't take too long. Okay. It will work wonders, it's just a little bit faffy. And while we're here, any areas that are darker on the paint job, like deep dark blue, of which there's not many, we can make sure that we go in a little bit more heavy-handed there as well. All right, so it's time for the spicy colors now. Get out Doomfire Magenta. This is a pretty unique color in GW's range, actually. There's not much else that is like it, I would say. So we're going to use this sparingly. I'm going to mix in a little bit of Treachy Violet, just to chill it out slightly, and some contrast medium. So what I'm going to do is the areas that I want to be slightly darker, I'm going to get undercoated with this first, and then we'll make a pure Doomfire mix as we get closer to those inner bits that we want to be really, really, really vibrant. So if I want this darker towards the bottom, okay, do that carefully all over. Make sure that I don't forget the little tubey section as well. And then we'll come back and we'll put down the nut stuff. All right, I'm slightly scared of this, but hopefully it goes okay. The main thing is to be confident with the strength of it. So I'm going to go closer to too weak than too strong. And hopefully we don't ruin our entire weapon in one go. Either too much on the brush or still too strong. I think I might have to get a bit of something kind of peachy on the go, maybe even some Cassandra yellow. I'm going to reapply some whites and then bring out some key areas. Move into an edge now, so when I get the excess paint off the brush, I'm going to kind of shape it to make my life a little bit easier. The brush has only just about got enough on it to leave, and it's almost a bit too dry. Mixing that blue over spell while we're here. Time to get out actual white. Okay, so after some pretty careful painting later, let's put a extremely thin layer of this down. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix some with Cassandora first. Quite nice because Cassandora is a shade rather than a contrast. It's just that tad softer. And over white shades are just a bit less worrying. That should be peachy, but no, Cassandora is overpowered, predictably. That's peachy. Don't know if this will work, but fingers crossed. Right, let's try mostly contrast medium and a dot. Yeah, so we should have just diluted it more first time. It still affects it so much. I guess I'm just not used to painting over pure white. You just have to acknowledge that the contrasts are really going to land heavily if they're a vibrant colour, even if they're pretty diluted. And you're just going to go and remove some, I think. Mop it up. Looks pretty effective. That's probably a bit too vibrant, but it looks quite cool. I can always fix it later. What we're going to do now is a pretty easy method, which hopefully you've already seen us playing with before. This is how we're going to highlight the shell. So what we're going to do is we're going to just be putting down careful minimal edge highlights with the Ulth one. Then we'll repeat our base coat over them and then we'll highlight again. I'll explain what I mean by that. So I'll do one of his thigh pad things. You want to do the little lines down it carefully. Let's get my reference photo up. I'll do it on his head actually, it should be easier to see. Obviously this is going to look pretty strong while it is pure, but the moment we dilute it, it should kind of chill out a little bit. Now little liney bits and dots and edges. Okay, anyway, that's what we've got. So now with something close to our base mix. It doesn't need to be perfect at all because this is one of multiple layers we've got on the area. So really don't stress about getting an exact match. That looks fine. I'm going to use that to kind of knock these back. And the moment we put that over it, we can get away with our work not being super neat or with it looking too bright. Now I'm going to do it finishing where I want it darker. There we go. So we have edging on there, but we've kind of pushed it to, well, it's not jumping out as the main event of the area, which is exactly what I want to go for. And that leaves room for us to go again. All right, I'm going to clean my thumb and I'm going to highlight all of this, but I'll clean my thumb first. Joys of DW pots, that's what's done it. Before I go and do that, actually, let's quickly grab a thematic blue and we're going to pick out the kind of between sections. Athematic blue is already wonderfully weak, which does have a purpose. I used to think it was crap, but it's just different, isn't it? I'm going to go around and hopefully
I might need to add a little bit of something slightly greeny in there. Yeah, I do. What type of green though? Ooh. It's just on the very kind of green side of turquoise, so what can we cook up? That's about there. We can always knock this back with more turquoise if we need. Better. Cool. Put it here, even though I've kind of deleted that and made that bit too dark. Really, I should have gone over some of these with white more carefully than I did. I think it stands out enough as different on the areas that I have put the white down on at least. Cool, those little hints hopefully will do what they do on the GW scheme and really, really pull some extra attention. Okay, a lot of edge highlighting. Let's go. Just realised. Let's give the tail a go because I am going to try the GW techniques on it. But first we need to transition it from lightish to the darkest fleshy area of the entire model. So we're going to do that with a bit of careful repetition. While I'm here, I've realised I missed some bits. Okay, the green bits are green enough now. I don't want to make them really saturated by repetition. I don't want to make the mistake of putting it down thick. I've got one thick area on the tail there, it really shows up. So I'm going to add a tad with the Pterodon turquoise, which will probably completely dominate things. And we're just doing this further back. Now check how simple our trick here is. These back three sections we've done it on, you can probably see what it is already. Basically, all we're doing is we're taking what our first layer was, or our first contrast layer, on top of the scales, and we're just layering it over our highlight. So you can do it over the entirety of the section, there's no downside to that, but basically just make sure you hit the highlight. You can do it as many or as few times as you want. So if you want to just subtly knock it back once, you can, like I've done there. If you want to do it multiple times, you can. That's it. So obviously, when you knock it back with the same color that it basically already is, you're going to really, really jump the coherency up a level. It's super controllable. You don't need any delicacy. That's all over with the highlighting done. So it's up to you. As many steps as you want, or as few steps as you want. Just pick your areas. What this will do as well, if you've got slightly ropey highlighting like I have here on the hoof, it'll make it more subtle. So you look like you're a better painter than you are if you made some mistakes, which never hurts with edge highlights. So after that, you are completely free to stop if you like the effect of that, or you could do it kind of GWE style and pick out a few key areas on each scale, maybe the top of the spike or something like that, and you could give them a final dot or a last highlight. Or you could even do some more of the lines, like the ones that we've got here, just shorter ones. There you go. That trick is magic. So I'm also using exactly the same trick here, just on the end of the tail. And that's to, again to hide things that didn't go quite right for me and to bring the subtlety. So these slightly dodgy edge highlights that I've got, and the want to fade to darker towards the end. Very, very easy to increase that, just with a few repeated steps, and you get a lot of depth as well, which is kind of cool. Okay, so now really interestingly, something I think is hugely important that we can learn from this is, you've just seen me knocking this all back, taking the colour down to a bit darker. I could sort out a few areas a little bit better than they are. But what's really important to note is that in knocking back the edge highlights, the variation in the fairly dark scales has returned. Now, we've actually made the scales darker, if anything, so there should be less variation. The reason for this is contrast between the very light edges and the very dark body of this section. Your eyes just cannot look at that if there's extremely bright edges there. So in knocking these back and bringing back the subtlety, we actually make it easier for our eyes to distinguish the quite cool effects and the subtle variations we've got as a result of using contrast on top. So really, really cool, and a very, very, immediately obvious example of why sometimes doing a little bit less can actually show off your painting a little bit more.
So, painting teeny tiny eyes. How on earth do you go about doing something like this without screwing it up? Number one, we're going to have some reference behind us. It's going to be very, very clear, as big as possible. Number two, grab a scrap piece of whatever you have going on, even if it's a fancy sticker. We are going to draw out very, very quickly. You could do this with a pen or a brush, doesn't matter. We're going to draw out what is important about the eye in question. So we're going to roughly get it shaped right, but it's not important for it to be perfect. That's our eye. Black up to here. This middle section is red, and then it becomes bright orange. And there is, in the black section, there's a little dot there that's really important, which is providing the reflection. So that's what we need to do. That's what we need to achieve on our miniature. Like that, it doesn't look too complicated. We've got a stripy bean. Next step, if your eye is going to be bright, make the job of your bright paint easier by putting a light colour underneath it. So I've used a white here. If you make any mistakes, just use a dark wash around the edge, let gravity do the work for you and the shape of the model, and it'll put it into the recesses. So now what I'm going to do is, using black, and I'm using a Baden because it's not that strong, and a small brush, I'm going to get the right amount of paint on the very, very tip of my brush, and then I'm going to tip my model at that angle where I can get the bit that I need the easiest and the safest without screwing things up. Make little stroking motions until I get close enough to the model, like this, to exaggerate. I'll be happy to tip it round to whatever angle I need to get into the bit that I need. Okay, so that's the back side of it done. Next step is to get a bright red, in this case. But we're going to put it on the eye, and we're going to put it over the black section where it'll get darker, and we'll put it over the light section where it'll get lighter. Again, carefully want to make sure that we're really happy with how the tip of the brush is behaving. Paint is leaving it easily, it's not too weak, it's not too strong. You've got your thumb there to test. It's not a rush, it's all about the angles. Not perfect, but it's good enough, and we can fix that slip below just by dropping a wash in there. We'll do that in a little bit. Next step, I'm going to jump all the way to bright orange. I'm using Troll Slayer here. Now, bearing in mind that we can put a black line around the bottom, it's okay for this to go too low, but not too high. So I'm going to try and carefully push it into the bottom corner of that eye. I'm using my brush point down, not side on, so I'm only going to touch with the very tip. And I'm holding my Tyranids so tight, it looks like I'm trying to stop it from escaping from my hands. Brace arms, get your eyes in close, make sure you can see what's going on. That orange wasn't bright enough. You can jump several more steps than you think here. You can always wash a tiny bit of your red or glaze a tiny bit of your red over the top if you need to. Just jump to Fire Dragon Bright. Should be easier to get a noticeable difference in a small area with this. Quick check, make sure it's leaving the brush easily. Right, bottom section done. Don't go too far. If it's going well and you would be happy with it how it is, stop there, that is good enough. We're on to the final two steps now. Let's grab a white. Pick one that you're confident in, that you know you can control, that's strong. And this is the potentially most easy bit to screw up, I would say. So it's really, really worth being very, very confident before you go in. Think like Sweeney Todd. You can prepare your brush for a minute, as long as when you come to the dab, everything goes right for 1 second. That's all you need. Okay, so I'm going to look at my mini. The dot is actually kind of an oval. It's kind of like this.
So with that in mind, I'm going to approach from the back, top corner. Hold my breath. Whoops, we're going to slip, but it can be fixed. Okay, nearly. So next step, I grab a wash for this. They're kind of friendly, they're not so scary to use, and if you use a strongish one, they're quite easy to drop where you need. Any mistakes we got around the bottom of the eye, obviously we don't want to screw up his face while we're fixing his eye, so you can't YOLO it, but you don't have to be too careful. Dab it in, again, directly, not at an angle, right for the tip. And because it's a wash, you should be able to wash up any overspill. Okay, so I'm going to quickly base this. If you want to see a more in-depth version of this, check out our recent basing tutorial. Essentially, I'm going to use wet blending to very quickly pop down quite a lot of variety on this base. So yeah, let's go fast. I'm using a size 3 here. It's a pretty old and battered one on my heavy duty brushes, but yeah, let's go fast and jump in. Okay, so just a quick note on the basing. I basically struggled to appropriately match the color scheme. When I zoomed in on both, what I have here and what GW have, theirs was a lot more rich. So I picked a couple of strong contrasts. I think Gorgrunter Fair was one of them. I just went back in and glazed them in. And essentially that brought up the vibrancy of the base. It made the colors deeper, and you can still always go over and dry brush afterwards. So yeah, that's what I did to make sure that it was deep enough and saturated enough. It only took a side-by-side comparison. I literally held my model next to the zoomed in picture on my tablet. Very obvious in hindsight and quite an easy fix. I wasted a bit of time on the base because I should have just held it next to the reference picture and paid attention to it. Also, they had a flat section on their base, which allowed for a lot more color on that flat section. I only put the chunks on. In hindsight, that would have made a difference as well, and it looks really good on theirs. So yeah, if you're copying, copy. So already that black base rim is making the stuff on top look more vibrant. One bit of sand on the side. Good eye. God, that's annoying. If you don't like putting time into basing, then use something like Sector Mechanicus because they speed it up so much you don't have to build it. You can use washes, you can use dry brushing, but always at least put the thought in and find a way where you don't have to rush it to be happy with it. Oh wow, that works really well. Lovely. I think I've got black on a piece of sand. It's really irritating me. I'm going to fix that and then I think we can call it done. I'm going to whisk around and do a couple of touch-ups, but there we go. All right, we're done. Class is over. Relax. I hope that worked. We're trying to achieve what we would do in person, online, and that was the best device we could think of to get people to start considering things. And that's all you need to do to start improving, is to start considering stuff. The moment it's a thought process, it'll affect your actions. Even if you're not thinking about it constantly, if you just do it occasionally, that's still a really good step in leveling up your painting. Let us know if you thought we were successful. As ever, the best suggestion below will receive a set of your choosing and a texture palette of your choosing. On that note, we've got some recent winners. Zorp for the comment on our basing tutorial, Lantern Bearer for the comment on our carapace tutorial, and Darren for an amazing suggestion that I'm going to come to very, very shortly on our highlighting video. So all of you guys get in contact. We will send you a set of your choosing, SD or M, and a texture palette. A couple more things. I'm running Facehammer GT very soon. Any attendee there who's buying a ticket,
I'm happy to sit down with for as long as you want in person and go over your painting with you. If you want to see a technique demonstrated or if you want feedback on your army, me and Russ from Facehand will be providing super in-depth feedback if you would like it. So tickets for that are down below. It's coming up fairly soon. I think it's about a month from the release date of this. But yeah, it'd be lovely to see you in person. That's in Element Games in Stockport. Darren's suggestion. Next thing. This was a great suggestion. You guys agreed because it was the most liked comment. We would like you to use the hashtag NidOpus along with a picture of you using the technique from our Carapace video. You could put it side by side with your old, like before and after. This was my old Tyranids, this is it with a technique, or just show the technique. There's no obligation for the model to be finished, just the Carapace is absolutely fine, but of course if you've got a finished model, that's brilliant. We didn't finish our model, so we don't require it of you. If you share it, we might share it in a future video, and just pop a little note down in there if you do want constructive feedback from us or from other viewers. Obviously, if you don't, that's fine. If you do, pop a little note in there and then people could weigh in if they've got any suggestions. We might do like best improver or something when we share it in a future video. We are very close to 100k subs. When we hit it, I'll probably try and paint a combat patrol or something like that. So if you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. And we are at quite a few cons coming up in the near future. We are at Nova Open and Gen Con in the States, and we're going to be at Spiel, which is in Germany. That's further off, I think that's in October. So yeah, if you're there, swing by the booth and you'll get an opportunity to sit down with us in person. We are planning proper classes in the near future at American and UK cons initially. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled for announcements about that. You guys have already spoken. You want fundamentals. Our class will be on fundamentals. I think that is everything.
If editor Ian is watching this one, he's watching it with Charlie on his birthday, so happy birthday, Charlie.
Let us know your thoughts on this format. If you've got any suggestions, we are always open to them. Continue enjoying your painting, continue enjoying your Tyranids. We will change in a little bit. We've just got a couple of things. We'll do brains next, maybe. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. We'll catch you in the next video.